Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Brain Está Spicy, the podcast where two overthinking, sometimes anxiety-ridden friends spill on their highs and lows and the craziness of navigating mental health in our daily lives.
We are your hosts, Melissa and Christy. I'm Christy. She's Melissa. And as always, we are going to be talking about the beautiful chaos of life with spicy brains and inject this safe space with as much humor and our unique sazon as we can. So get yourself comfortable, grab your favorite drink or three, because it's sure to be a super fun time.
And just so we're clear, everybody, we are not medical professionals. The views and opinions that we are going to share on our show are for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not doctors, lawyers, or financial advisors. If you need expert advice in any way, shape, or form, please seek out the proper qualified professionals.
Seriously, go to therapy.
And with that, here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to My Brain Está Spicy, evening edition. I am flying solo this evening, so I ask everyone to give me some grace. Christy's taking some time to herself. She's had her birthday recently, and she's just doing her own thing. So you've got me this evening, although I'm not completely solo. I do have a guest this evening who I'll introduce in just a moment. I'm really excited about this episode. Before I jump in, just a quick touch base like always. I don't know about everybody else, but life has been lifing. Between stress of client work, which aptly fills into today's episode, and just different things going on in life. Unfortunately, had a passing a couple of days ago for a very good friend of mine, for her mom, and just a couple of other things with life, including getting ready to sell my house. So that's going to be fun coming into the end of the year. But we're back, and I'm super excited to be joined today by someone all the way on the other side of the world. Literally, she is in the future, folks. The wonderful Kate Astill from Woman CEO. We connected on Instagram, I think it was like 2 months back. She did a really funny post about if you're a late stage millennial woman in XYZ kind of demographics and you're looking for a fun, safe space and a couple of other things. And I read it, I was like, that's exactly us. That's who we talk to. And I commented and she reached out to come onto our show. And I'm super excited to have her. And today's episode is for all of our badass business owners that tend to listen to us, our jefas, which I'm really excited about because that's kind of where I find myself today, a space that I never thought I'd find myself in. But life has a funny way of pushing you into certain directions. And with that, I will turn it over to Kate to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her. Kate, take it away.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm excited to speak to you guys as well. I always love an opportunity to speak about business, wellness, life, all of the things that are happening at the moment. So I now classify myself as a business coach and social media strategist. Previously, in what feels like another life, I was a medical scientist for 12 years. And then around the time of COVID, I discovered yoga, mindfulness, all of the things that the world was really screaming out for at that time, and dived into my yoga teacher training and decided to open a wellness studio, a yoga studio, where while working full time, I taught 7 to 9 classes a week. Almost ran myself into the ground.
No.
And quickly worked out that I had no idea what I was doing with business. Like I was doing what I thought I should have been doing as a yoga teacher, doing what I thought I should be doing as a business owner, never really done much with accounts, with admin, with budgets, with like forecasts, anything like that. And if you're a millennial like myself, you may have had parents that told you that your time was priceless. And it's priceless up until the point that you're a business owner, and then you have to charge for services. And so you need to put a monetary amount to it that fits in with life, with what you're doing, with what you're charging, with what you're providing as your service or product. So I really struggled in that first year of business. And as I said, it was right around the time that COVID was kind of at its peak. Here in Australia, we were kind of lucky. We went through a lockdown initially where the whole like the whole country stopped, and then it all reopened with some state border closures. And where I am out in the country, we stayed open. We stayed open right up until I think it was August 2021. So I pretty much had an uninterrupted run of yoga up until that point in time. And it was around the same time that I was feeling a bit burnt out. And then the whole town was closed. So we were closed for 6 weeks. As a business owner, I still had business expenses, but I wasn't making the income into my small business. So, what I really did in that 12 months and then in that space moving forward was more development in the area of business, more development in marketing, working out what works with an audience, what doesn't, a bit of sales psychology, and then trying to incorporate like the wellness side of it too. So, I really needed to practice what I preached to all of my yoga students. I would tell them to come in and be mindful and be in the moment and to leave whatever was with them at the door just to have that space for themselves. But it was something that I couldn't do myself. So it was a lot of self development, I suppose, at that time that led me into the space I'm in now, which is helping female entrepreneurs build business in ways that complement their life, in ways that don't burn them out, and in ways that just feel good, doing more of what feels good and less of what doesn't.
Yeah, and I think looking over, not only your website and what you preach as part of your products, but also with what you post on your social medias, especially your Woman CEO Sayings channel. That's one of the reasons why I resonated with what you're doing, and it directly ties into what you were saying. It so often, regardless of what you do, whether you're in business or you're in corporate, there's so much spent on focusing to just earn the dollar, right? And we don't often take the time to sit and focus on what is bringing us joy, whether it's within the corporate space or your private business. What are the things that you really enjoy doing? And how can you do more of that to make the work more fulfilling, right? Um, and I think, unfortunately, because of that, I know burnout culture and um, constantly just being in that hustle mindset exists kind of everywhere. But one of the things that I'd love to touch on throughout today is kind of how you help your clients through that. And what are some of the things that you help them focus on in terms of how their nervous system ties into their business and overall work. But before we touch on that, yeah, I found myself as a business owner now, as a result of unfortunate layoffs. I know that that is a recurring theme for hundreds of thousands of people all across the US. I know that other people are also experiencing in other countries, but if you're tapped into anything having to do with US politics, it's rampant here, and certain groups are being affected more than others. So I was out of work for almost a year. But at the beginning of this year, a good friend of mine recommended, why don't you start your own business? Even if you don't do anything with it at first, just start it so you've got it set up. You don't know where you're going to be in 6 months. And if in 6 months you don't have anything and you got to pay bills, you've at least got a business already set up. You don't have to wait for it, and you can start consulting in whatever you do down the line. And I'm so glad that she did that, because around the time that I started to get like really desperate with not having work, I got my first lead on a 1099 contract gig here for the States. And instead of just getting paid like just a regular contractor, I was able to get paid as a business contractor. So I'll be able to kind of take advantage of all of those tax benefits that businesses get to take advantage of that otherwise I wouldn't get to take advantage of as just a regular person. But one of the things that I noticed, and I'm still struggling to this day, and I'm sure it'll still take its time, as you're working with new business entrepreneurs, which we love the fact here that you do focus primarily on women, because that's great. Just a couple of fun stats, even though we're not a stats heavy kind of show, I did want to come prepared, specifically within the US. Female owned businesses make up over 45% of new businesses within the US. That is wild. That's almost 13 million female-owned businesses, and we contribute over $2 trillion to the economy, right? And of that number, which shows a big gap, because again, we're only 45%. So that still means that male owned businesses still own a majority of the market, but that parity has absolutely come up. But within the scope of female owned businesses, Latinas only make up 14%. So there's definitely a huge gap there that we could absolutely fill with over 2 million female owned businesses. And as you're coaching new female entrepreneurs, what are you finding for those that come from corporate? So let's say they're not starting a business super young, coming fresh out of college. They never really got into the business world. They just decided to become some sort of entrepreneur, right? What are you finding are some of the things that you still carry from your own previous medical sciences business, having been an employee, and the women that you help and how they're struggling with breaking basically the corporate mindset to becoming business owners?
That is a great question. And it's something that I think I was a bit blind to when I first started my business. And I was talking to someone who was a yoga client, and I was just telling her about I was starting into the social media space. I was starting with some coaching, and I was talking about how like I felt like I was so busy all the time, like I didn't have time to do all the things. And then I started to make lists of what it was I was actually doing in a day. And I started to look, and it's like I was trying to fill every hour like you do in a corporate job. So if you're working 9 to 5, you need to fill every hour that you are there with some sort of activity, something to be productive. And I brought that into my small business. And it took me probably a good 18 months to realize that I didn't have to be working 9 to 5. I could work 9 to 12. And then I would have these extra 5 hours in my day that I could fill with whatever I wanted to fill it with. It could be wellness-based activities. It might be a meditation. It might be going for a walk in the middle of the day. It might be catching up with friends for lunch. It could be absolutely anything. But breaking that mental note or that belief that you have that if you are working for yourself, for someone else, that you need to be productive every single hour that you are on the clock. Mm-hmm. It's something that I found really difficult to break. And it's something that I found myself just filling my time with all of these useless activities. So now what I do with business owners is I have them track their schedule for a couple of weeks, what they're actually filling their time with, and then going back through and having a look at if the activities they were doing, did they have to be done? So that's the first question. Did you do them because they're moving your business forward? Are they a money-making activity? Are they building your brand, building awareness? Does it have to be done? Did it have to be done in the time frame that you did it? Or is it something that should have been done at a later date? Like if you're looking at funnels and sales cycles, are you actually in a space where you're looking at growing your audience as opposed to in the nitty-gritty of a sales funnel? Mm-hmm. And then if it had to be done at that time, did it have to be done by you? Something as women, as small business owners, we wear this badge of honor that we can do it all. And that's not the case. We don't have to do it all to start with. That's something that takes a lot of people, sometimes a lot of space to kind of move through. When you become a small business owner, it's okay to outsource what you don't enjoy, to outsource what you're not good at that takes you a lot longer than what it would take someone else. So it's about finding the activities in your business that you're spending time doing that are consuming your time, taking you away from the money-making activities that you could be giving to someone else who enjoys that activity, who does it in half, a third, a quarter of the time. Mm. So that was definitely some mindset shifts.
Now, you mentioned something that kind of triggered a question in my brain with regards to kind of finding that freedom of not having to work every single hour of the day. I kind of find myself in that situation right now, but I find myself in that situation right now Mostly because, like a lot of new entrepreneurs, when you need the work, if you have to work every hour, you're working every hour, right? But I feel like one of the things that I'm noticing is a lot of it is also tied to how we as women undervalue ourselves, especially when it comes to what do we charge for what we do. And I'm absolutely guilty of this at the moment. I've got a wonderful client that I'm working with. We'll probably work with him for a long time. It's a great environment. It's fun work. But I feel like because I was so nervous in what it means to be a new business owner and a consultant at that, which you're, when you're consulting, you're not necessarily selling specific tangibles unless you're doing like an output kind of tangible. Like if you're doing specifically social media creation or creative work, or you're a report builder, things like that. Mine is much more of a helping define your processes. Maybe I might build some stuff out for you, or as a project manager, if you really think about it. Project management is just babysitting adults. That's basically what I do a lot of the times.
Yeah.
I'm following up with people through email, making sure they're on calls, making sure they're on time, but the output really isn't reliant on me. So I think one of the things that I've struggled with is that valuation point. I've got a new client coming in. I've done a little bit better. I'm getting a slightly higher rate, but I'm still at a number where I have to do a larger amount of hours in order to feel a bit more comfortable in the numbers, from what I came out from having worked a corporate job to be able to afford life. So what do you recommend for your clients in terms of balancing how to properly value yourself to where you're able to compensate for what you're losing in corporate, which in the US usually means you're getting your additional benefits of healthcare and so forth. In other countries, that's not
Yes.
really the problem, but we're not going to touch on that. But in general, like how do you address that to where you help them see their value?
What I like to do is kind of work backwards. So I first like to think over a 12-month period of time, how much money do you want to make? So let's say 12 months, we're just going to round this out. Let's say you want to make 10 grand a month, 120 for the year. If you're going to make 10 grand a month at what you're currently charging, how many hours is that you're going to have to work? How many clients is that you're going to have to sign? So I kind of like to work it off that. What a lot of people find is that they don't have enough hours within the month to be able to work enough to make the money that they want to in the month, to be able to span it out over the 12. So then it's about thinking, okay, so for how many hours you want to work, what is the hourly rate that you need to be charging? And then there's also this aspect of what do you feel comfortable charging. A lot of people who come into business, I must say, like, coaching is like 80% mindset, 20% strategy. The strategy is not the difficult part. It's the overcoming the mindset obstacles that come up when you introduce a new strategy or change.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking about pricing and you're new in business, you might feel like you are not experienced enough to charge the rate that you want to charge to get paid the amount you want to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this line between what you feel comfortable with and what's getting you closer to the figure that you want to be making annually. So usually what we do is try and find a balance. So something in the middle that's making them maybe 80,000 a year instead of 120 to start. And as they start bringing on clients, as they start to build their confidence in terms of their sales calls, in terms of closing deals and things like that, as they start to onboard people, we can then start to moving their price point, because once they become more in demand, once their brand is more well known, once they've got some tangible, like you said, once they've got some testimonials or case studies of the benefit that they've added, they can then start to use that as evidence, not only in their mind to justify their pricing, but also to others when they're selling themselves. And having worked with a lot of clients in the States, in Australia, in Europe, I must say that the Americans are a lot better at talking about their strengths, about what they bring to the table compared to the other nations. Everyone else in Australia, we have this thing called tall poppy syndrome. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
It's essentially, if you're a tall poppy, people will try to cut you off at the knees to bring you back down with the rest of the field. And so it's where you don't want to stand out, you want to blend in. So when you ask an Australian about their strengths, sometimes they really struggle with listing that confidently. They feel like they should be modest, like they shouldn't be praising themselves to others because it makes them, in their minds, it makes them feel like they're full of themselves, where in actual fact, it's just them promoting themselves and their business and their strengths. So it's like it's another mindset. It's another layer of mindset that you've got to kind of delve through.
Yeah. And can I
But
ask you a question on
and the
that,
yeah,
if you don't
yeah.
mind? Oh, so with regards to that, do you guys, as a result, as a collective, how are Americans with their stronger grasp on confidence? How do we then come across on the other end?
Confident. Well, it's only in relation to like our culture.
Okay.
Like it's only the contrast. The other thing as well, like my mum's American, so all of my family's been from America. So in terms of in terms of culture, like I can definitely see the two differences, and I can also see how it comes across from both sides. Because having spoken to a few Americans, I know that sometimes Australians come across as like real laid back or not caring or not worrying about anything rather than being like bold, confident, assertive.
I think that's a really interesting line because you're not the first person that I've heard say that, and I think from an American's perspective, and specifically from a Latina's perspective, I think the reason why a lot of that is seen, unfortunately, is a result of our own culture. And
Yeah.
there's so much that can be said for how the much of the rest of the world, not the entire rest of the world, but much of the rest of the world views life as a whole and how every component plays a part in life. And you even touched on it earlier when you talked about how, you know, I can work just a couple of hours every single day versus needing to fill every single hour because you're looking at
Yeah.
the value of every hour and the value of every action from a holistic total view, not just from a dollar-based value view. And unfortunately here, it is very much about how much am I making per hour just for the sake of being productive, not so much from how does what I do value me, how does it value the world, and what does my life look like separate from that. And I think that's one of the things that I'm coming to start to really enjoy and scares me about if I were to ever go back to corporate is that flexibility of my being able to make my decisions for myself. Right now I'm choosing to try to work a bit more like if I was in a corporate, but I'm splitting the work between whoever I'm working with, just because I kind of want that routine. But I can switch that up at any point. I can also make the decision. Like tomorrow, I was supposed to have three different calls in the afternoon. And unfortunately, due to the close family death that happened, I made the decision that I'm not going to work tomorrow afternoon. I had one meeting, I moved it, and I didn't have to give excuse. I just said, hey, can't do it anymore, moved it. And now I get to put my time and my value towards something that's very important to me. And as a corporate
Yeah.
employee, you have to fight that. Oh, but do I ask my boss? Are they going to be understanding? Do I have the hours to take it in terms of, using your vacation personal time to be able to use it? So it's funny how it's looked at from that perspective and that you all have received that input of like Australians are more laid back. And I don't, it's not to say that you all aren't and that other parts of the world aren't. I like to look
It's
at it
just
from the perspective.
stereotyping.
It's
Yeah.
exactly. And I don't think the stereotype is fair because I really do feel like it's more so you all just look at life from a much more whole view versus your work is your life.
We try.
Um,
Yeah.
so with that, as far as corporate still affecting business entrepreneurs and that hustle mentality for you, How important or how much do you find your business folks are looking at hustle as the end all be all versus replacing it with this idea of true intention and presence in the work that they're putting out?
I think a lot of them, so a lot of it goes back to like that perspective that you have, the beliefs that were formed when you were younger, past experiences. All of that kind of comes into it when we're looking at our presence. We're looking at, into the future, what we want to create. I think very much so. There was once a time where hustle culture was like a badge of honor. It was like, well, I didn't finish work last night until 9 p.m. and then I was up at 5 and back at work by 6. It's like that was the badge of honor. And it was almost like a competition as to who spent the most time at work or who did the most amount of hours outside of what they were meant to be working, potentially what they're not even paid to do if they're only paid for a set amount of hours per day. And with business, when you've got that mentality from corporate and you're coming into business, especially if you're service based, you might look at it as though, okay, so you're going to work, say, 7 or 8 hours a day. If you're doing calls with people, that might be 7 or 8 1 hour calls that you want to do back to back. Even like service based industries like hairdressers are a perfect example where they've got like back to back clients all day. A lot of business owners, so I've got kind of two demographics of business owners that I work with. One, they're starting out, they're wanting to get their systems in place, they're building their foundations. They don't want to have that hustle culture. They've either seen something that I've posted on social media, they've got this vision, they've heard something, they've seen something where there's like this curiosity about I can build business, but it doesn't have to consume all my time. And so they're already in the mindset of how do I do this? The other set of business owners I work with had an idea that to be successful in business meant sold out services, sold out hours, everything is jam packed. And then they come to me burnt out. They've capped their income ceiling. They've got no more hours in the day that they can trade for money. They're undercharging their services. So they're not even making a lot of money from working nonstop all week, every week. They rarely take vacations because if they do take vacations, they feel guilty for taking time away. They have clients that now have these expectations that they'll be available or on call at every waking hour for anything that they might need or will fit them in at the last minute. So they don't have these clear set boundaries around what they will or won't accept. And they come with like, what do I do? How do I change this? How do I flip this? How can I introduce more passive streams of income? I only want to work 3 or 4 hours a day. I want to take Fridays off. And so we start pretty much back at the drawing board as to how we can build a business that's going to work for them in the right, like the money that they want to be making, but also in the time that they have that they want to be working. A lot of people I feel into small business because they have a love for what they do, not a love for running a business. So initially I had a love for teaching yoga. I didn't have a love for marketing or for running a business or for budgets or for administration. And I think not all of that is spoken about to people when they start a small business. They just think, I'm going to open a hairdressing salon because I love doing hair. And then when they start to burn out, they start to resent what they once loved. There's not that fire that once fueled them to do what they love. It's kind of fizzled out.
So with that and people doing what they love, do you have any experience with your clients that come in that start a business kind of similar to a situation like mine where I'm starting it
Mm-hmm.
based on things that I'm good at? I don't necessarily absolutely love it. If I were to pick anything that I'm doing right now that I'm absolutely loving, it's this. And
Yeah.
it's some of the marketing work that I'm starting to get exposed to because I'm getting to tap
Mm-hmm.
into a creative side that normally I would just do for myself, and now I'm doing it for other people, and it's landing, so that's great. Um, but when it comes to starting a business out of necessity and focused on things that they've just always done and they just happen to be good at, but it doesn't necessarily light them up inside, how do you help them navigate that to where they can try to find joy in what they're good at, and make a successful business out of it.
I think it's the question, is that the business that they should be running, or should they be running something that's more in alignment with what fuels their joy? For you,
Mm.
for example, like podcasting, there's so much money in podcasting in terms of sponsorships, baked in ads, guest features, so many different ways in which you can make money through doing something like this, or offering advice to other people who want to start podcasts, who want to deep dive conversations and things like that. So it's like working out, okay, so what do you love? And even in the business that you're currently running, what aspects of it do you love? Do you feel excited by? Do you want to go and do every day? And are there aspects that are just like more on a sliding scale? So there might be something that's truly lights you up, but then maybe 40% of the work's just mundane, working through the motions. And is that something that you could potentially outsource or remove from your service offering and just do more of the stuff that you love? So it's kind of like, it's having a look. It's very much independent of everyone's situation, finances, flexibility, opportunities. I do believe that we create our own opportunities, but sometimes like different connections that you've made through the past may influence what you are or aren't able to do in this present moment. But like looking forward, we're about to start a new year. So thinking to this time next year, what would be your ideal situation? How much money do you have sitting in your bank account? What are you doing day to day? So when you wake up, what is it that even from what are the sheets that you're in when you wake up in the morning? When you roll out of bed, what's the first thing that you do? This is where like the yoga and the manifestation and the vision casting, I suppose, happens, that quantum embodiment for you in 2026. What is it that's going to set your soul on fire? What is it that you are going to absolutely love? And even if like this time next year, you don't achieve everything that you envisaged, if you didn't do that vision piece, there's no way that you'll be anywhere near where you want to be, because you wouldn't have started paving that path to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much like traditional goal setting, action plans, to-do lists. I love structure. So it's more thinking about where you want to be. What are the steps you need to take to get there? And not all paths, like there are several paths that will lead to the same destination. It's just about picking the one that's going to work best for you.
Yeah. And hopefully it's also the path that happens to have the least resistance, because things come a bit more naturally to you, or it's a little bit easier to navigate. Not always the case, but one can hope.
No, definitely not. I've had a few clients who have like pushing a boulder up a hill. Like they've tried to take a path and it just has everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And so
Went wrong.
it was literally about going back to, everything going back to the drawing board and being like, okay, so how can we achieve this, but in a different way? And then they'd achieve their goal within 2 months because we'd redefined the way in which they were going to get there.
And with that, on that journey of like finding that path, how important have you found in the years that you've been doing what you're doing? How important have you found community, especially for women entrepreneurs, plays a role in the success of someone starting their own journey as a business owner?
Yeah, I love this question. It's so hard to go from corporate, being around coworkers, managers, bosses, whoever else, clients sometimes, to then going to small business where you're sitting in your sweats in front of your computer in your lounge room with your Ugg boots on or whatever it might be. It's like it can be really isolating. So something that a girlfriend and I did in town is we started a female business networking group where once a month we pick a topic and we all go and meet. We all have coffee. Someone does a presentation on something that's either going to help with like wellness, mindset, business. And it's an opportunity for everyone just to come in and connect. It's a Facebook group where you can ask questions. You can do some market research. If you've got something on, you can connect and, catch up for lunch or celebrate a win. That's something that's underdone in business as well. when you're your only employee and you sign a new client, who is it that you celebrate with? So I think it's community is so important when it comes to successfully running small business. And I'm definitely very much about collaboration over competition. So connecting with other people who are doing what you do,
Yeah.
connecting with them, and even just hearing about the struggles that they have, because they're likely to be the same as you. If you're doing the same thing in the same industry, you've probably got the same pain point clients. You've probably got similar wins or celebrating different things. And there's just this like understanding, I suppose. You're
There's a
kind of going through
kinship
the
in the
thick of it
pain.
together. Yeah, yeah. It's like when people network at the gym when they go through a hard workout and you've just done 50 burpees and you've got someone beside you that's been doing it every step of the way. There's this like unspoken bond that you then leave with after that class. So it's similar in business when you're going through certain things. You've got this connection and bond with people who are doing the same thing as you.
Sure, sure. And with that, we all know that connection helps the body, it helps the mind. Whenever you feel like
Yeah.
you can unburden yourself in a way, it helps manage things. So when it comes to managing your body in your business, what are some ways that you help your clients understand the power of slowing down versus always needing to speed up? This kind of ties back into that hustle mentality, and how slowing
Yeah.
down can be better for growth than speeding up. And then the second part of that
God,
is,
yes.
what do you find, or what do you help clients kind of identify as how they can see stress showing up in their body differently as business owners than what they would have experienced as corporate? Because that overhead is now a new thing that they've never had to deal with unless they were a manager or a director. But even then, it's still not the same as owning a business. So how do you navigate those two things?
Yeah, interesting. I feel like self awareness is first and foremost. If you don't have, if you don't have the awareness to be able to recognize when there are changes happening, you won't be recognizing the symptoms leading into burnout.
Mm.
There was something that I was reading, I'm not even sure where it was from, but they were talking about fight or flight and the way in which it's felt within the body. So, like years ago, think back when like we were being chased by lions and we were hunting for our food. Our body would respond to that stress, release adrenaline to make us be able to run at a really fast pace away from danger. Now, we can cause that same physiological response in our bodies with a single thought. With a thought that might be, oh my goodness, my client just canceled their contract. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to make enough money. They start forecasting into the future. I'm not going to be able to make my mortgage repayments. I'm not going to be able to put groceries on the table. It might spiral. I'll be homeless. And it continues getting
Haven't
worse and
gotten
worse.
that
And they've
far.
caused,
I haven't gotten that far as to having the homelessness kind of spiral, but everything else you just said before that, absolutely
yeah.
felt that.
And so it's like, and that's all stemming from a single thought, which is causing this like adrenaline release in the body. And so well, the other thing is like when we're feeling like we're in danger, our hip flexors start to shorten. They start to pull our knees into our chest so that we can protect our body. Like we're moving into a fetal
Fetal
position. This is
position,
why
yeah.
people get, if you know people in your life who are extremely stressed, worried, frustrated, angry, they may have really bad hips or lower back. And it's usually because they've had these stress responses that have started manifesting in the body, started shortening of the hips. They might also combine that with sitting for long periods of time, whether that be in the car, at a desk, or wherever. So their hamstrings then start to shorten. It's, or even people who feel stressed when they start to hold their shoulders up near their ears. And it's because there's just this tension that the body is holding. And unless you actually stop and think, even listening to this now, think, oh, am I holding my shoulders? And then just letting them drop. And it's like, oh, I was. How long was I doing that for? How long have those muscles been tense and tight and I've been walking around and not realizing it? So when it comes to business, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes there are more stresses that fall on our heads, like you said, there's a bit more responsibility as to outcomes, decisions that we make, how they affect people, if we have families, how they influence them. And then there's this fear around making a bad decision or doing something that might lead to a bad outcome. And so there's this underlying fear sometimes around everything that we do. This is not for everyone. This, I would say, is for a majority, that someone at some point in time has had fear about making a decision in small business. And this is where, as a small business owner, if you're moving from corporate to business, the first thing I recommend doing is placing 2 hours of white space into every day.
Okay.
Pick a time, doesn't matter when it is, 2 hours of white space. That white space is for you to sit and feel. So if you're I'm not a journaly person. I'm not going to sit there and write down my feelings, but I will sit there with a list of questions in front of me and run through them and see how it's feeling within my body. So I might sit there and think, okay, so how am I feeling right now? Physically, not mentally, but how is my body physically feeling? And it's like, oh, okay, so I've got, my ankle's a little bit sore, I'm feeling a bit tight in my hips or my back's a bit tight from sitting. What is something I can do within the next 5 minutes to kind of move that through my body? So I might go for a gentle walk or do some stretching or some way to move that physical thing through my body. The next is a mental check-in. How do I mentally feel? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling burnt out? Am I feeling like my joy cup is empty? Am I stressed? Am I frustrated? Or am I feeling light? Am I feeling excited? Am I wanting to not sit here for 2 hours and think about my feelings, but actually dive back into my work because I'm so excited to get something done? And it's just that small check-in, that like that self-awareness that brings you back into your body, into the present moment. It makes you be mindful as to where you're currently sitting and how it's working within the body. Even checking in on things like, when was the last time I ate? Have I eaten fruit and vegetables today? How much water have I consumed? How much coffee have I consumed compared to water? Coffee is a diuretic. You're going to be losing fluid. So it's like making sure your fluid intake's up. When was the last time I moved my body? Have I gone for a walk today? How many steps have I done? Have I gone to the gym recently? Have I done any strength training? And it's looking at more that whole picture, because sometimes as a business owner, we can have tunnel vision as to what do I need to do to make money? And we just keep doing things until we make money. But that's not the solution.
Yeah, because
That's the hustle culture coming in.
exactly, and it'll drain us entirely. And I think you gave some
Yeah.
really great advice. A couple of things I'm definitely going to consider doing. Um, on my end, one of the things that I've noticed recently, I've I've really started to notice in my body where I'm feeling tightness, and I'm trying to incorporate movement. Um, for those that are new to our show, just as a friendly reminder, so I have a walking disability. So naturally, my body carries a lot of additional tension that most other people's bodies don't carry. It's as if the second half of my, like the lower half of my body, it's as if a rubber band is stretched as far as it can go. And imagine that across all of your muscles. And that's how they are 24/7, 365. They never relax. It's an unfortunate side effect of what I have. Um, so as a result of that, I am very body self-aware, and I'll notice where the pain is, but I haven't taken steps to actually try to correct it or move it around. So I've started this week. I'm day 3 in. So I can't speak as if I've been doing it for, 6 months or a year yet, but I am already liking how I feel. And I've decided to start
Yeah.
small. So I saw this, I forget how long ago, and I kept the video on my phone. And it's like it's tied into the 7-minute Tai Chi movements. So it's a series of simple 7 steps. The first one that you start out with is like the hopping for just a minute, and then you move through an additional 6 movements. And I've just done it for the last 3 days. And what I've already seen in just 3 days, I don't struggle with the exhaustion that I was feeling first thing in the morning. I still wake up a little bit tired, but that's just kind of getting acclimated to getting up again early in the morning. Whereas before I was getting up at like 10, now I'm getting up at 7 in the morning. Um, but that sloth kind of feeling I don't have anymore. So doing that, I've noticed my clarity of mind is a bit better. And then I'm also realizing that at night I'm actually getting tired. So you mentioning like doing those two blocks to take a holistic scan of how you're feeling, not only physically, but also mentally, really stuck out to me in terms of what I've already been seeing, and how that plays into your joy cup being full. Because whether we realize it or not, how we take care of ourselves fills that cup. And that also ties into who we interact with and how they fill our cup. And as
Yeah, our relationships, any
exactly,
interactions that we have. Yeah.
exactly. And I think, you touching on starting that one community with your friend, who also
Mm.
happens to be in the same space, I think that's also key. I think a lot of the times we think of networking and creating community, and a lot of people don't know how to do it for a specific purpose, but also with the right group. It's really easy to look for a networking group out there. Small business owners. Okay. Having a general small business group is great, but finding a small business group that's tapped into what you do elevates the community aspect that you're looking for to an even higher level. And that could be culturally, that could be specific to the tasks or the deliverables that you give out as a business. And funny enough, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that I don't have that for myself as like a specific angle for what I'm doing for work. I just have a lot of very general networking. So if anything, I'm definitely taking away a homework assignment for myself on how to do that. So thank you for that. Um,
That's all right. I would say, like the group that we've created, it's all female entrepreneurs. But after more reflections throughout this year and different topics that we've had and people that have come in, I would say a lot of them are also neurodivergent. So a lot have like ADHD
oh,
tendencies. I don't know if this is a thing in your network, but in Australia, a lot of my friends are being diagnosed, the female friends are being diagnosed later in life with ADHD because it presents differently in females than what it does in males.
I think that's
And so
happening
it wasn't a
globally.
thing. Yeah, so it's a thing, but we like the conversations that we're having, a lot of them once thought, I thought this was only something that I did. I thought this was just a habit or a way in which I did something. And then someone else will be like, oh no, I do it like that too, or I do this. And so it's like, it's not just the community aspect in relation to business, but it's almost like that validation in life that, you're not alone. There are people like you who do things like you as well. It's not isolated to your case.
Yeah, I think that phenomenon is definitely not just isolated to you all. That is absolutely happening here. In my
Yeah.
general networking group, I've met two women that, and it just naturally comes up in conversation that have mentioned, oh, yeah, I got diagnosed just recently. One of them is ADD and ADHD. The other one is ADD and just found out she's on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
And, like,
We have a
it's,
psychologist in our group that was diagnosed by her psychologist as ADHD, and they put her on medication. And as soon as she started the ADHD medication, she went back in, and the psych's gone, you also are autistic, like you're also on the autism spectrum. But it was being masked by her ADHD
mhm.
symptoms.
Yeah. It calls into question and thought how many people, and specifically women, have struggled for so many years because, unfortunately,
Yeah.
even though it's getting better in different parts of the world, um, there's so little effort and research that is put on the experience of women as our in general, but especially as our bodies change. And it doesn't surprise me that more women are also getting diagnosed later in age because as our bodies change and our hormones shift, right? new ticks come out, new things that before we could mask, we can't mask anymore. And I think that masking concept is something that all of us deal with, especially as women, because
Yeah.
we're told we need to dumb ourselves down. And I think the more we come into our own, the more that opens up. So it's just interesting that has that naturally just kind of came up in conversation, because I feel like this keeps coming up a lot with different women that I have conversations with.
Yeah, it's coming up everywhere for me too. And I think something that was really great that the psychologist said, because there are things that I do that lead me to believe and her to believe that I also have ADHD. However, she made the differentiation as to what the benefit is of being diagnosed. So, firstly, if you need to have a diagnosis, go and see a psychologist. And if it's affecting your life and productivity, go and get the diagnosis. But if you are functioning in society, it's not impacting your relationships, it's not impacting the work that you do, you're still functioning quite well, and a diagnosis wouldn't change the way in which you do life, you don't need to be diagnosed.
Huh, that's fair. Do you think this is just general for my own curiosity? Do you think that of the ones that you've heard of that have gotten diagnosed later, whether they've been put on medication or not, it's just, do you think the validation of knowing um, helps them in
For
any
some of
way
them,
with dealing it?
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on your personality. I don't feel like I need a diagnosis to impact, like, it's not going to change the way I do things.
Mhm.
It's likely that I would be diagnosed with it, and having it wouldn't change anything about my life. So, what I have done though is, like, there are lots of different tools and things out there in terms of like mindset, mindfulness, the way in which we do tasks that make it easier for people with ADHD tendencies. So, something that I love doing is turning my notifications off to everything and just focusing on tasks at single times. I work really well with a calendar or planner, and I move through what's written into my day. But if I don't find I have structure, if there's nothing there, if I've got a blank slate, I feel like I don't know where to start. I'll start here and then switch to this activity, and then I'll switch from that activity back here. And everything gets muddled and it gets to the end of the day, and I've done a lot of nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I've done that's moved the needle in my business. However, I've been busy all day.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean by that. And funny enough, I'm a mix of old school millennial when it comes to that, and just regular what everybody does with regards to balancing a calendar that has things scheduled, but also literally just old school. And I'm going to grab it because it's funny for me. I have a notebook, I have a pen, I don't mind writing,
Yeah.
and I have to make a checklist and I have to cross it
Yeah.
off. Like that validation of being able to cross it off. And if I don't cross it off and I leave it for the next day, and it's the same list as the day before, not literally the same list as the day before, but in the sense of like I rewrote everything. No, no, no. It's I didn't rewrite it. If I rewrite the tasks that I didn't finish for a new day, something about that doesn't make me feel like I wasn't as productive. It's just like, okay, you just didn't get to it. But now you have a new plan and new tasks to do
A new
for the next.
list.
Exactly. It's just the idea of the new list that makes me feel so much better.
You're speaking to my heart. Same, same.
Okay, so with that, we're coming up on our hour. So all I really want to do is just kind of, as an overall encompassing of with the different points that we've touched on, if you could give listeners of ours that, let's say, have never really thought of potentially starting their own business, or the idea has started kind of creeping in, what would you give them as a recommendation of an activity that could help them kind of figure out what they may or may not be able to do a business in, um, and why it's not so scary, or why it shouldn't be so scary?
I always love the activity of thinking forward 12 months and thinking about what life could look like. In terms of that, I always like to look at one possibility where we stay on the same trajectory. So we stay doing what we're currently doing. The next option, it might be something within that similar field, but not in the trajectory you thought. So, for example, when I first did this activity, I was working as a medical scientist. The natural progression would be for me to move into management. My alternative was to move into project management, still within the medical science field, but slightly off center from what I thought I would be doing. And then for the third option, pick something completely wild and different, completely, like absolutely left of center. I think at the time that I did it, I'd picked photography. And it was just so out there and crazy. And I felt so silly doing it. But in doing that activity, it made me think that the life that I thought I should have been living may not be didn't have to be the one that I did. Mm-hmm. So I don't know about for you, but for me, when I was growing up and I was going through high school, my next progression was to pick a degree and go to uni. Then once I finished uni, it was to either start working or get onto a grad program. I got onto the grad program, and then to get a full-time job working in pathology, so working as a scientist. And I did that. And so I literally followed what culturally and societally I believed I needed to do to be successful. I got to this activity and wrote down photography as one of the crazy things that could never be me, because I'm going to work a career as a scientist for 40 years. Then I'm going to access like my superannuation and retire and whatever else. And then in doing that activity, I was like, it's almost as though a door had opened in my mind at the possibility that me working as a scientist didn't have to be what I had done. So I think if you can do that activity and then think forward 12 months as to what could it possibly look like, I think getting clear about that before you even start thinking about what you might start in business or what you might be doing, but just getting clear on your possibilities. What doors are open for you? What doors can you open for yourself? And knowing that like change is scary, stepping outside our comfort zone is scary, but that's where the real growth happens. That's where the magic happens.
I love what you said about possibilities, like focusing on what are the possibilities that could come. Doesn't surprise me that you say something like that, because that absolutely resonates with all of your content. It's one of the reasons why I like following your content, because I think what we digest affects us a lot, and I don't think people give it enough credit.
Yeah.
So on mine, I would absolutely say, I would add on to that and say, think of what are you taking in, and what is one area that you could bring in some lighthearted joy, whether it's something that you're reading, something that you're watching, something that you're listening to, or something that you're doing that can help you kind of balance the craziness that's going on in your brain, so that then you can sit down and do an exercise like that. Because I think what a lot of people would run into is, if you do the exercise when you're in a space of anger, or you're in a space of frustration or desperation, the activity is going to be completely different. And it doesn't mean that if you can put yourself in a happy space that you're ignoring everything that's going on. It's not. It's just you can't see the possibilities if you're not in a state of seeing possibilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, with that, thank you for joining. I've got one last question, and this is part of our spicy questions from Christos. So we've got a list of randomized questions. I picked one earlier today, although I did not read it yet. So I just kind of copy pasted and I've had it ready for you. So your question is, if reincarnation is real, who or what would you be coming back as?
I already know the answer to this question. I would come back as my parents' dog. Mum and dad have 2 dogs, and they are like, they've got priority over all the kids. Like, the dogs are here. Me, my brother and sister are at about here. They get meals cooked for them. They live inside. They've got plush toys. They, sleep on mattresses. Like, that would be the life. And that, like, all they have to worry about is when their next meal is coming and when they're going to go for their next walk.
I'm not going to lie, I had the same thought, just not specifically my parents, but the idea of, I think if I were to come back as a dog.
Yeah. No, I think it would be It would be quite the life.
Because you've just seen what they've been treated as. So, listen, they did a whole movie on that. Like someone that passed away, became a dog, and then found their previous family, right? Or their family, and then became that family's dog, or how, like, through different reincarnations, they came back and kept finding the same people because they knew that those same
Yeah.
people either A, needed them, or B, would always be good to them. So I love that answer. That was a great answer. So. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Kate, for joining me. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this conversation. I took a lot of good pointers, even just for myself. So thank you. For our listeners, I will include all of Kate's information on our show notes as always. But for those that are listening now, if you would like to follow her or her business on Instagram, you can find her at Kate Astill _ on Instagram to follow her directly. If you would like to follow her Woman CEO account, you can follow it at Woman CEO Sayings. I really, really recommend that if you're a business owner, please follow that one because the post that she puts out about encouragement and manifestation and just different pieces, it's a great thing to kind of wake up to and just kind of start your day with. So I highly recommend that. For us, as always, you can find us on Instagram at My Brain Está Spicy. You can find us on all your favorite streaming platforms at the same name. And if you would like to interact with us outside of Instagram, you can reach us on email at thespicybrainpod@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a beautiful week. May your brains be just a little bit less spicy. And as Christy usually says, your tummies too. Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you hanging out with us on this mental health ride. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, follow, comment, and share My Brain Está Spicy with your fellow overthinkers, because the more the merrier in this Spicy Brain Club. Catch you next time. And until then, may your brain be just a little bit less spicy.